That was me!
What's up, gel ballers? Today I'm taking a look at a new low-cost, very high-performance gel blaster called the SR4 from Star Rainbow Company in Taiwan. These are sold in Australia by Tactical Edge Hobbies, and there's a bunch of cosmetically different models to choose from. If we take a look on Tac Edge's website, my personal favourite is this one here called the Mamba. Just look at the shape of that handguard. Very cool. Tac Edge sell two different price points of these as well, either nylon externals in the mid $300 range, or you can splash out and get full metal externals for the mid $500 range. The unit I'll be reviewing today is called the Light Sport, which has nylon externals and more of a traditional AR appearance. It's priced at only 349 Australian dollars, making it one of the cheapest gel blasters available, especially considering its performance, which I'll get into in a moment. Internally, all of the SRC blasters have a cast metal V2 gearbox, giving them a nice weight and a step up in durability over the old nylon gearboxes that entry-level budget gel blasters used to come with. Another nice feature is if you remove the buffer tube, you can actually access the spring retainer to swap out the spring. And for a lot of players, you will probably have to downgrade this blaster because it shoots 370 feet per second straight out of the box. Most fields have a velocity limit of 300, 330, or even 350 feet per second. I don't think many allow 370 feet per second. But to get this below 300 for where I play at, I just use an M90 spring. For the externals, although this model is nylon rather than metal, it's incredibly thick and sturdy. If you're familiar with the old XYL ARP9 gel blaster, I'd say this has a pretty similar feel to that. So, nice, thick, solid nylon. I've seen way worse nylon handguards before, especially on cheap blasters like this. This one only moves very slightly, so I'm quite impressed. Even the buttstock doesn't have as much slop to it as many other gel blasters do. So overall, I think the quality is very nice for a nylon gel blaster. Taking a look at the front, the flash hider can be removed by first loosening a grub screw underneath, and then unscrewing it with a 14mm counterclockwise thread. Taking it off reveals an exposed portion of inner barrel. This has a 7.2mm inner diameter with, unfortunately, an 8.6mm outer diameter rather than 9.5. So you can't add a hop-up directly to the end of the inner barrel. Instead, you'll need to get a thread-on hop-up such as the Aztec Hellfire, which I will be actually using in my accuracy test later in the video. Moving on from the barrel, it has a fixed front iron sight and a bayonet lug underneath. It also has a sling point, but unless you're playing a full day milsim event, I would never bother using one personally. Especially on this nylon model, it's just not heavy enough to need a sling for general gameplay. Further back from there is the Picatinny quad rail. This is where you could add attachments like flashlights, cameras, PEC boxes, you name it, whatever you fancy. Up top, the rear iron sight is both adjustable and removable, and if you take it off, it reveals a Picatinny top rail underneath where you could add a sight of your own. Personally, I'd recommend just a 1x red dot optic. Moving down from there, now we get to the solid nylon receiver. On the left-hand side, it has a logo on the magwell, and a lot of long-time gel ballers are going to love this magwell because it's designed for Gen 8 mags, which you probably have heaps of laying around from years past. For anyone operating a field, this could be a good loner blaster for beginners depending on your stockpile of Gen 8 mags. Although it can also take other mags, like my favourite SLR mags, but they are a tighter fit. The mag it comes with has a side loading door, just pour in some gel balls from a speed loader or soft drink bottle, and push it into the magwell until it clicks in place. The mag release is where you would expect on the right hand side of the blaster. Just push that in and the mag will come flying out with some velocity behind it. With tighter mags such as the SLR mags I mentioned before, you will need to physically pull on them to get them out of the magwell while holding down the mag release. At the rear of the blaster, as you'd expect, the M4 stock adjusts to various lengths using the lever on the bottom. What some beginners get confused about though is that if you pull the lever down, you can actually remove it entirely, and this reveals where the battery goes. The SRC blasters use a mini Tamiya connector, which is pretty standard for the gel blaster hobby. You can either use a 7.4 volt one or an 11.1 volt one, but for a higher rate of fire, I'd recommend the 11.1 volt batteries. With the stock reattached, battery connected, and mag fully loaded, now I can go over functionality. Out of all the gel blasters I've reviewed on this channel, this has to be the first one that has mag prime on the bolt release. So after you insert a mag, just push this in on the left side of the blaster to get the gel balls fed up into the T-piece, ready to fire. Alternatively, you could just dry fire the blaster until gels start coming out, but that isn't necessary with mag prime. Plus, mag prime is quieter than dry firing, which is beneficial if you're using it in the middle of a battle. Like most other M4 gel blasters, the selector switch has 3 different settings: safe, semi, and full auto. It doesn't have an audible or tactile click to it at all. In fact, I'd say the fire select is the cheapest feeling part on the blaster. It just rotates freely into any position, and it's difficult to put it on semi without looking at it in the heat of battle. Because of that, I'd recommend just leaving the blaster either on safe or all the way around on full auto for all of your skirmishing. The SRCs also don't have any kind of MOSFET or fire control unit, so the trigger response feels pretty basic. I also found that on semi-auto with an 11.1 volt battery, it would sometimes fire 2 gels from one trigger pull, which will become pretty obvious now when I chrono test it. The gel balls I'm using today were kindly provided by iHobby. Check them out at the link down below. Now when I fire the blaster, pay attention to the numbers below 300 feet per second because that's when 2 gels fired at the same time.
370, 358, 361, 367, 292, I think it fired 2 gels at once though, 355, 349, 366, 294, again 2 gels at once, 360, 368, 354, 371, 370. This thing absolutely slaps for a stock cheap gel blaster.
Including the double feeds, it shot a high of 371, low of 292, average of 352, and a standard deviation of 26. I suspect the double feeds could have been caused by an 11.1 volt battery instead of 7.4. I didn't actually have a 7.4 with me to test, but it could also be caused when 2 gels are on the smaller side, one after the other in the mag. But if the double feeds were eliminated, the high would have been 371, low would have increased to 349, average would also increase to 362, and the standard deviation would be much tighter at 7.3. That's incredible performance for a budget $349 gel blaster. And as I mentioned earlier, too high for most fields' rule limits. So if this is your first gel blaster, I recommend picking up some weaker springs to swap into it. Now, keeping in mind this is a stock gel blaster, it has a pretty low rate of fire. But I imagine that's to handle with a 370 feet per second spring, giving it the durability required for a beginner blaster. Experienced users could always upgrade the motor or swap in a different gear ratio if they want a higher rate of fire, but I would probably recommend downgrading the spring if you're going to do that, just to prolong the life of the blaster. With the chrono test completed, now it's time for an accuracy test. Straight out of the box, I found the accuracy was pretty terrible, but what can you expect with no hop-up and 370 feet per second? So I pretty much immediately added an Aztec Hellfire thread on hop-up, and what you're about to see is how it shot from a distance of 30 meters away, firing at a 1 meter diameter round target.
Alright, we'll do some full auto sprays.
So here's the results. It does look like I should have probably aimed a little more to the right, so correcting that with the magic of video editing, it shot a spread 1.5 meters in size, which is pretty much how any other gel blaster performs at 30 meter distances, but this is doing it at 370 feet per second. Out of 25 shots recorded, 13 of those impacted the target, so this blaster scores around a 50% hit rate at 30 meters. But after using it for a day of gameplay, what do I think of the SRC SR4 overall? For the price, this nylon gel blaster definitely packs a serious punch. In fact, the velocity was so high at 370 feet per second that I had to downgrade the spring to even be allowed to use it at my local field. Swapping the spring is nice and simple though, with a spring retainer at the back. Just remove the buffer tube first with a Phillips head screw and twist it to access. The internals, such as the gearbox, are all metal, which you definitely want over plastic at this performance level. And the externals, although nylon, are thick and solid. You can alternatively pay about $200 more and get full metal externals instead of nylon. But honestly, you don't really need to with the quality of this blaster. I do have two small complaints though. Firstly, the inner barrel has an 8.6mm outer diameter. I understand why they did it. It's a carryover from airsoft, so they didn't need to retool or redesign the outer barrel, but it does mean you can't attach a hop-up directly to the barrel like most other gel blasters do. It also means that you can't swap in a barrel of your own, since gel blaster barrels are all usually 9.5 on the outside. My second complaint has to be with the selector switch. With no tactile or audible click when you go from safe to semi to full auto, it's really hard to position it on semi without looking at it. Aside from those two downsides, overall this is a very good blaster though for the price. And I think it's always good to see new options at the lower end that beginners might choose when first entering the hobby. If you want to pick up one of these blasters, find it at the links down below. That's all I have for you today. Consider leaving a like or a dislike to let me know what you thought of the video. Here's two other ones you might enjoy. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.